by doing that.
So I don't forget. Yeah, absolutely. Those have yeah, that's really how it has turned out most of the time. Especially after like the first launch, I really realized that people were coming and had a lot to share. And so yeah, I found that the combination of sharing information and having conversations and discussions has been really rich and really great. And of course, there's the people who are showing up really have a lot of knowledge and ideas around this.
Perfect.
Um, yeah. Hi, Marianne. Nice to see you. Um,
Nice to see you too.
yeah. And and Paulo, nice to see you and nice to meet you, Paulo. I know about you right through Rebecca, and then everything I've learned about value flows innovations and from LinkedIn. But I think this is the first time we've had actual contact.
I think so. Very nice being you, Rob. I think it happened the same. So I noticed you on LinkedIn, and I think we were close to be in the same conversation. So, but we are on the same conversation space, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey, Rob,
Um,
what might be interesting is because I don't know. I mean, would you talk a little bit about the co-op first? Just for Marianne and Emmanuel and Paolo.
yeah,
Maya, I'm sorry if that's repetitive for you, but it would be super fabulous for me and for Paolo anyway.
No, don't worry. I
yeah.
just got here.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Maya jumped in. Maya, where are you located at geographically? If you'd like to share.
Tampa, Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then yeah, which is also of course indicated, by your shirt. Nice. Sure. Well, why don't I just give a brief share about Holistic Systems Cooperative. I think that's a great idea, Rebecca, and it's not repetitive. I could talk about all this all day. I think so Holistic Systems Cooperative, I would say, it came about really to solve this problem that I think of as like this conundrum that I know I find myself in, and certainly other professionals, working professionals, independent contractors, entrepreneurs, freelancers, that we're in this conundrum that we want to be doing work that's feels meaningful, that feels in alignment with our values, that feels purposeful, and yet we have to pay the bills. And we want to change, create transformation in the system that we're in, and yet we exist and have to live in this system. So there's a way, where there's a way where we're kind of stuck. And so the idea of Holistic Systems Cooperative is really it's one, method, group, idea, for how to unstick ourselves from the situation that we're in. And really the only solution I've ever found for that is collaboration. And so this is a method of collaborating in a particular way, in this way of saying how can we help each other meet our needs, and doing that is helping each other, having our needs met, right? That is kind of this core of what an economy is. And if people have found, right, if people are able to reach a certain level of safe stability in meeting their genuine needs, then they're able to have more time, more spaciousness to really participate and be of service in the world in the ways that they want to. So really kind of coming at this from this economic realm. And so Holistic Systems Cooperative it's a resource pooling and value exchange collective. And we also call it a community economy. And so as a community economy, it is it's based around a particular group of people. So this model, right, is transferable to any kind of community, including, land-based, location-based communities. So a community could be, a locality or a town or a village. A community could be based around, a group of people based around a purpose, could be based around professionals. So holistic systems is based around, a group of people that feel like they have pretty complementary needs, and can have a lot of resources that are helpful for each other, right? Which is professionals and entrepreneurs. And so, so really the community economy, I think, speaks to it. So the important, aspects here are the number one, the community. So it's a community of people who are coming together, right? We feel like this kind of community economy, it only works if it's based on trust and relationships, and bringing your whole person, everybody, being able to bring their whole person, to the table, and all of the gifts and value that we bring. And so then there's the economy part, which really, think about it, is kind of a big resource pool, which is saying, let's, rather than moving around the world as like separate entities and cutting off our resources from each other, because that's the system that we're in, that's what it's designed for. Let's say, hey, well, how about we pool all of our resources? Let's bring in everything, all the different kinds of value that everybody brings to the table, all the 8 forms of capital, all right, and bring that together, and then synergize and alchemize that. And so that's, and so really there's kind of 3 main economic mechanisms, in this current model. And the idea is, to be able to have everybody bring their resources, figure out, where those can flow to, figure out, effective methods for flowing that value to the places, and people of greatest benefit. And of course, in doing all of this in this larger purpose of, creating, systems transformation. So transforming the systems that we have, but in a way where, we can do it in a, as a transition, right? So it's meant to be a complementary economy. And again, the idea, the purpose is to help us, meet our needs, and while we're also simultaneously working in social transformation. So that's Holistic Systems Cooperative. The idea for today is, and for this, we're having this Catalyst group launch. So the idea is that we have this, a framework that's pretty well laid out that we want to try, and we have a member portal, right? So we need a tool to help facilitate this. So tech is kind of the enabler. So the platform or the app, the member portal, it's not the thing, but it is something that I think is still needed. So, the community, the people, the values, the guiding principles really is what holds it together. But we have, this tech tool that help actually facilitate these value flows. So the idea of this Catalyst group is really to say, hey, we have this offering, and it's set up in a way where we feel like it's ready to, have people to start to jump in and to catalyze this resource pool, because the beauty of it is that, it doesn't require external funding. It just, it can be built on what everybody is bringing, but it also does require, a certain sort of initial catalyst to, boost that resource pool. So today is the 3rd module, and that's really on redefining value. And so the idea is that we talk about that concept, and then take a look at it in the member portal and see how the concept and these ideas apply to how we actually participate and experiment and play it in the value exchange and in the community economy. So I thought, rather than me talk about it, bring in somebody like Rebecca, who is I got a little bit of a preview an hour before, right? And I've heard Rebecca speak, had the pleasure to meet Rebecca last year in person. Yeah, who has been working with the idea of redefining value for a long time, and along with other folks here. So yeah, so that was the idea. So for Rebecca to kind of share about these ideas and help us, understand these concepts better. And so, of course, this is for us here today, and also the recording for other folks. And then, as we go along, please, it's an open discussion. So as we go along, if any questions pop in, put them in the chat or raise your hand or shout out. It's really a discussion. And then, we can continue kind of the discussion as we go along. And then the idea is, towards the end, maybe, at the top of the hour, this is scheduled for 90 minutes. At the top of the hour, we can jump into the member portal and take a look at that. So, yeah, without any further ado, then I'll let Rebecca take over. Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, thank you, Rob, and thanks for all for being here, friends, family, and new people that I'm delighted to spend time with. I'm actually super excited to discuss redefining value and measure it, because at value flow, like, we measure what truly matters in the context of what holistic systems cooperative is thinking about. This is our work, and this is what we think about all the time. So it's super exciting for me, because when somebody else is talking about it, I get to play. So, right. And shockingly enough, I'm not only here to talk about reciprocity, even though several of you know that that's my whole conversation all the time, every day. But I'm also representing VFI and also our partnerships and otherwise. So, because we are a company that's um, dedicated to redefining how we value what is most valuable and measuring what truly matters, because we believe that by properly valuing essential things and interacting through reciprocity, our decisions will align more with the values of life. So, we have forgotten what our most important things that we value are. We've forgotten. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But, you know, so this is a super important conversation. And Rob, I'm super thrilled that the Holistic Systems Cooperative, being this contribution-based economy, is a powerful example of moving beyond this conventional economic system, right? And because your model recognizes and rewards the diverse ways members can strengthen the collective. Have I got that right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
100%.
cool.
Yeah, it's
So,
huge.
so thank you. And I also think that maybe you asked me to speak here today because reciprocity is a foundational principle of this contribution-based economy, and it's crucial for understanding how value flows within your ecosystem, but I think our all whole world, right?
Yeah.
So, um, so with all of that said, I want to talk a little bit about money, because uh, from my point of view, and I won't speak entirely for value flow, but at least for my 100% of the time conversation, is that money is not our only currency. And how money is often the opposite of reciprocity. Now, what do I mean by that? Um, so, in our current world of capitalism, where we have all been entrained to believe that our only currency is money, okay, I'm not villainizing money. I'm only suggesting we don't need, and I'm certainly not, I'm not suggesting that we don't need money. Okay. So I'm not villainizing it, and I'm not saying that we don't need it. What I am saying is that we need to put it into a bigger picture and context, that it's not the only currency. Okay. Um, so we at VFI believe that there's many forms of currency, as I do believe the co-op does as well. Um, And our current system of value is often rooted in capitalism and hypercompetition, individualism. Oh, sorry. VFI is Value Flow Innovations. It's my company and Paolo's company, actually Paolo's company. And we're talking about this. So this is, I think, why Rob asked me to talk, and where we measure what matters and value what's valuable. So this is why my expertise is somewhat in that conversation, Maya. So thanks for the question. I appreciate it. And feel free to speak up. Don't, raise your hand or whatever. Um, and so, so what, so back to what I was sort of saying, that our current systems value hypercompetition, individualism, and these things are the opposite of reciprocity in several ways. Okay. Now, what are these several ways? These systems prioritize enlightened self-interest, accumulation, and transactional relationships over things that are mutual benefit, shared growth, and fairness. So I know, Rob, I gave you the answer to this already, and maybe I've talked to everybody else on this call except for Maya about this, but here's a crazy example. I wonder if you guys know what one of the largest growth industries in the US has been for many years, even decades. Emmanuel, have we had this conversation? No? So I'm just going to say it out loud because I find it so appalling. The largest growth industry in the US for probably decades is storage. So we are more interested in storing our stuff than housing our people. Okay. So this is why money is the opposite of reciprocity in my mind, right? Like this is a fundamental oops. Like, how do we possibly think that this is okay? In a reciprocity-based economy, that stuff that's in that 10 by 20 freaking unit somewhere that you don't go but once a year should be in the shared economy. That stuff should not be in a freaking locker. Okay. How is it that we care more about our stuff than each other? Like, this is appalling. So, the other piece is that by relying solely on a monetary value, it's super limiting. Okay. It devalues or undervalues crucial contributions. Okay. Like so many of the things that I believe are part of the cooperative, like volunteer work, caregiving, education, and stewardship of natural resources. I'll talk more about some of these things in a bit, but it can also lead to what I believe is this lie of separation, right? For me to accumulate all of these things because I need to have more and better, and I have to have 5 storage units. Um, uh, like this is so crazy because we are not separate from each other. What I do to you, I do to myself. So in reciprocity, that doesn't exist. This is science. This is not fuzzy wuzzy math, right? So we have to remember that we belong to each other, and that um, obscuring our interconnectedness um, and the many non-monetary exchanges that sustain life are what is killing us in these times. Okay. And another piece is that if we can foster sorry, if money often fosters a scarcity mentality, okay, and prevents us from recognizing the abundance of all of the other valuable resources we have. And in the co-op, it's called, we call them currencies, the co-op calls them something, other pieces, but we can all agree that there's many things that have incredible value that aren't money. So, Are we good to go? Does anybody have any questions or thoughts before I go to the next?
Oh yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
So if there was like a reciprocity economy, then then what would be the number one growth industry?
In a reciprocity economy,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be a number one growth industry. We would all
Oh,
rise together.
oh, okay.
We would all be in a circular or collective economy together, where everybody's value is important. The economy as a whole, for sure, Emmanuel.
Hmm.
Do you have any other questions there, Emmanuel? Oh, okay. Maya, anything else there, or are you good?
No, that was it. Also, for the science of reciprocity, there's something called mirror neurons, and
Mhm.
they will like light up when like you see someone doing something like they like it's I think they're supposed to be the foundation of empathy or something. But that's part of the
Absolutely.
science.
You might know more about the science than I do, and so sharing any of those things would be amazing. So thank you for bringing that up. I know very superficially about the science of reciprocity. I know more about the practicality of it. So please feel free to bring in the science if you know more. Thank you for that. Rob, do you think it's okay for me to move into what reciprocity isn't?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing that you had talked about, before when we were chatting earlier was you kind of laid out these different like kinds of currencies or the types of value that were like really important. So I don't know
Yeah,
if you
so
want to talk to that later, but like
yeah,
number one, time is and attention, and then
yeah, for sure. Let me talk about reciprocity a little bit first, and then I'll tie that back in. Is that okay?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So then great, great. Yeah, please. Then
Is that okay? Okay.
keep,
And
of course,
but
yeah, keep going with reciprocity. Yeah,
yeah,
since we're
I'll
on
go
that.
there since we just had this beautiful in an invitation from Maya. Um, so I thought it would be sort of helpful from my point of view to talk about what reciprocity isn't. And I just had this long conversation with Paolo this morning about it. So I've had more time to sort of stir on it today than I have in a regular day. But the first thing that I would say that reciprocity isn't is it's not barter and trade. Okay. People believe that barter and trade is the same as reciprocity. Barter and trade is actually based on money, on like a value, and it's transactional. So Rob, you have an orange and I have an apple, and they have similar of cost. They are of similar financial value. So barter means we can exchange those things with ease, right? It is not that. Reciprocity is not that. It's not transactional and it's not barter. Reciprocity is not an equal or exact exchange. Okay, what does that mean? Reciprocity doesn't require exchange to be identical for or equal in value in all aspects. So, for instance, someone might offer me emotional support because I lost my dog, you know. Um, and but later down the line, it's, like I might be able to offer help and support because you really need to go get somebody to go get your groceries today. It's not the same, of equal exchange. It might be two totally different things and so forth. Does that make sense? So far, so good. Excellent. And it's also to that point, it's also not immediate. So in this example, I lost my dog and you know, I am not going to be able to give back to you right away in the same form because A, you don't even have a dog, and B, that's not the kind of things that you need in this moment. But later down the line, I see that you need something, or you've said that you need something, or you need some help. So I can offer you that that time and attention that you have given to me in reciprocity by going and getting your groceries or taking care of something. And then something that's super important is that reciprocity isn't always immediate. It doesn't happen instantly. Sorry. Reciprocity is the opposite of reciprocity is unhealthy competition. Forgive me. Um, where one side benefits at the expense of the other. Okay, so that is not at all reciprocity. It's the antithesis, really. Reciprocity isn't coercive, it isn't transactional, and it isn't tit for tat. Make sense? Maya, sorry, you want to say that out loud?
Oh, sure. I said, do the exchanges have to be ultimately like in the long term equal in value to be reciprocity, or is that like barter?
It doesn't have to ever be equal in value. It
Oh,
just
okay.
it's what is valuable. So what is the need is the most valued and valuable. So it doesn't have to be equal in financial value ever. But I'll give some examples in a couple of minutes here, sort of more specifically about some of these things that might help you a little bit. Is that okay, Maya?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. Okay, cool. So from my point of view, what is reciprocity? Again, in order to talk about what reciprocity is, I want to go back to talking about the comments I made about money. Because capitalism, we've all been entrained to believe that money is the only currency and it's the only thing that's valuable. Um, uh, that what I see is that money is only one of our many currencies, right? And our conversation today, for example, is actually a valuable form of currency by sharing and exchanging of time and attention and experiences. And so from my point of view, um, this is the building blocks of, from my point of view, again, the ancient laws of reciprocity. It's not merely an act that involves a mutual exchange, to your point, Maya, right? It's a natural system based on interdependency, connection, and creates shared value and abundance for all. It's dynamic, so it's not flat, right? Like it's constantly changing. It's context dependent that thrives on trust, which is a huge conversation we just had, Paolo and I just had this morning. It thrives on trust, mutual respect, appreciation, and understanding. Everybody good so far? So, okay. So, let me give a couple of examples of where this is in definitional defined points, right? So, presence and authenticity are pieces of reciprocity because when we are engaging genuinely and fully without immediate expectation of return. So in this call, we are exchanging, right? Somebody asks a question, I stop, like I want to hear people's points of view. I'm really interested in what other people are saying. So this is a piece of reciprocity, right? It's presence and authenticity. Another piece, circular reciprocity, is a continuous reciprocal actions benefiting all members, reinforcing a bigger cycle in life. So that's sort of talking about what I just described. I lost my dog. I'm getting help that I need right now to, because I'm grieving or whatever. And so people are taking care of me. But then a couple of weeks down the line, I can put my time and attention into the field in something else. Okay. That continues to go around the circle. And then positive engagement. And this might go to what you were talking about, Maya, in terms of the science behind reciprocity, is positive engagement evokes feelings of awe and love and appreciation, right? something like natural generosity is recognizing and appreciating nature's value and abundance. And all of this is in the spirit of mutuality. And the intention behind the exchange is not always an exact equal transaction. Okay. As we talk about in value flow, that reciprocity is the glue that that keeps relationships together. And another part of what I believe is true about reciprocity is that we've forgotten the basic laws of nature, right? We've forgotten that we belong to each other. We've forgotten our connection to nature and each other. And then, therefore, we have forgotten reciprocity. Okay? So I want to bring up my favorite indigenous scientist here, Robin Wall Kimmerer. And she is like my living spirit guide. And she wrote an essay called The Service Berry, where she describes going and picking these service berries in her backyard. And she takes these buckets and she goes into her backyard, and there are thousands of birds eating these berries. And she doesn't eat, like, they've eaten so many, she doesn't even understand how they can fly. But they're, like they're, porked out. And she gets to pick 2 buckets, but there's still thousands of birds. And she has this realization that she hasn't paid the sun, she hasn't paid the rain, she hasn't, she hasn't paid the bushes, yet in this natural cycle, she's gifted these berries. And then she takes these 2 big buckets of berries and she walks out of the forest, and then she's able to give one of the whole buckets to her neighbor. And the neighbor is able to then say, oh my God, I'm going to make pies. And the neighbor makes pies and gives those pies away. And then, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, there's no money exchanged in any of this, except it's an incredible circular gift, reciprocal economy. So, this is just like a simple view that, we are the only beings on this planet that use money as our primary currency. If we could see that all of these other beings on the planet are able to use these natural systems of reciprocity, could we do that too? And I think that's what the co-op is trying to do, right, Rob? Is that right? Okay. So I wanted to give you some, what Rob was describing before, some sort of concrete examples of what our other vital currencies are, or capitals, as is described in the co-op, right? So the first, in my point of view, is time and attention. So time and attention is the only currency that every single being on the planet has to give and receive. I'll say that one more time. Time and attention, everybody on this call, all the birds, all the dogs, all the, all the things have time and attention to give and receive. There is no other currency that every single being on this planet has to give and receive except for time and attention. Okay. So obviously it is, from my point of view, I believe it's the most valuable currency. My point of view.
Wait, but hang on. Like, what about like plants and the sun and stuff like that?
Well, I'll get there.
Oh, okay.
But plants in the sun also have time and attention, right?
They do?
Well, they do, I think, because they're working in an operative system. But I'll get there.
Okay.
I'll get there in a second. So another concrete currency is care or emotional labor. Okay. It's always undervalued in our current monetary system, right? The care economy is totally undervalued. So the example I always use, and Rob has now started using, which is super awesome, is this sort of, I'm a babysitter and Rob's an attorney. But there isn't enough minutes or hours or days or weeks that I can exchange with Rob in a financial capitalistic system. So I could get his lawyerly services, except the value of taking care of Rob's children. How are we not valuing that appropriately? like at 20 bucks an hour on a good day versus 200 bucks an hour on a cheap day for an attorney, right? What is the value of your children? So this is not part of the equation. The care economy is totally overlooked and totally externalized as part of our economy. Caregivers for elders, babysitters, teachers, nurses, they've totally externalized all of their value. Except, oh yeah, by the way, during the pandemic, these were the only people that had to work. Infuriating. Okay. Okay, then knowledge and expertise sharing. Okay. Um, so offering skills that benefit everybody, right? So I'm going to tell you a quick story about value flow. So back in the day, a couple of years ago, we would meet with a group of about 10 land projects that we were working with. And the one thing that we really always, well, I'll just say frown upon is that you don't ask for money in these sessions. And then one day, one of the project heads gets on the call and he's all freaking out and what's going on? Like we ask him, what's going on? I need 10,000 euros. What do you mean you need 10,000 euros? Like we don't talk about asking for money here, right? Well, I need 10,000 euros. Well, what do you need 10,000 euros for? Well, there's 20 people here and our hot water heater went out. And so we've got no hot water. Okay, so let's be clear. What you need is not 10,000 euros. What you need is a hot water heater or hot water. And so when we started to actually break it down and having a longer conversation about what they actually needed, which was hot water, we were able to be much more creative and start to think about, okay, can it be fixed? Well, it's just post-pandemic, Central Portugal, not so easy, but it could be fixed. It just wasn't going to be fixed in a good amount of time. But then another one of the land project managers said, well, what kind of hot water heater do you actually need? And the guy said, well, I need an XYZ hot water heater. The other guy said, well, could you use an ABC hot water heater? And in fact, he could. So this idea of taking away 10,000 euros out of this ecosystem changed to being able to borrow this hot water heater. And so it led to more things than just the exchange of this hot water heater. They dismantled it from one place and they were able to share knowledge and wisdom and time and attention and all of these things. And then they were able to then go back to the other place and install it, meet, share wisdom, share food, all of these things. And those relationships and those values and those things that are most valuable got exchanged and are still maybe even getting exchanged today, which are not valued, paid for, accounted for, in a traditional way. So then to go to your point, Maya, natural generosity and gifts from nature, right? We need to recognize the inherent value of natural resources. The sun, the air, the growth of trees, which don't require a monetary exchange. Yet, if we're in an extractive culture, we're going to cut down those trees. A pristine forest is only valuable in an economic system of real estate if you cut down all the trees. So we actually have to recognize the value of the gifts from nature. And then another piece would be being of service. And this is a significant form of currency, moving beyond the transactional nature of paid work. So we don't account for the checking in on our next door neighbor. That's an elder. We don't, account for getting groceries for just more than me, like making sure I'm checking in on other people and seeing what they need before I go to the grocery store, right? Another piece, which I was talking about a little bit earlier, is this idea of imagination and creativity, which we've lost in these conversations. And this is a significant form of currency that moves beyond transaction, right? And what gets, I'll just use this thing, like it gets screwed as artists, especially like musicians and fine artists, they get screwed in this economy, right? If you think about a nonprofit fundraising event, they always ask for artists to donate their work to the fundraiser. And then an artist might have worked a year on a piece of unbelievable art, and somebody pays $100 for it. It's like appalling. Or a band is asked to play at an event for free, but yet they've been practicing for years and they're really fabulous, right? Like this is unacceptable. And then this last is, I'm just going to talk about hospitality. There's this quote from this guy named Parker Palmer that I like to talk about. And again, Paulo and I were talking about this morning, so I have some other pieces about it that I have just come to me. This idea that hospitality is always an act that benefits the host even more than the guest. The concept of hospitality arose in ancient times when the reciprocity was easier to see. In nomadic cultures, the food and shelter one gave to a stranger yesterday is the food and shelter one hopes to receive from a stranger tomorrow. By offering hospitality, one participates in the endless reweaving of social fabric on which all can depend. Thus, the gift of sustenance of the guest becomes the gift of hope for the host. So hope is involved with reciprocity here too. That that we can't guarantee that I am going to get, I'm going to be received by somebody else down the line. Except we can have this hope. And if more of us were able to be and believe in this piece, we would have more abundance. The pie gets bigger. And perhaps we can start thinking about reciprocity as this kind of operating system, which Rob, your guys are doing, right? And so I'll just give two more quick examples, and then we should have questions and move it over to you. But like this other story, which Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about, is sort of this indigenous giveaway. So she was told the story of this researcher that went into this indigenous community, and this indigenous man had been out hunting and got a very large elk and brought it back. And so the researcher asked, well, where will you store the elk? Your family is small, you're not going to be able to eat it all. He's like, I don't understand what you're saying. Well, will you smoke it? Will you freeze it? Will you refrigerate? Like, how will you store it? I will store it in the bellies of my brothers and sisters. Right? So we're going to have a community party, and everybody will eat from what I got this time. And that really speaks to this idea that I think the co-op is really working toward, is that members are able to offer their best and highest gifts, their professional services to the cooperative, they've gone hunting and they can share their food. And this is what we at Value Flow call the reciprocity marketplace, which is similar to some of the work that the co-op's doing. But anyway, so that's all my craziness for the moment. So if there's any questions, or if Rob, you just want to take over from here, that'd be great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you, Rebecca. No, just first of all, just open up if there's any questions or just any thoughts or comments that want to that are flowing in from what we're talking about here, that feel like they'd be helpful to share with the group. So just want to open it up for a moment.
Yeah, I have some thoughts, because I've only known Rebecca, I don't know, 6-8 weeks or something like that, and you've really got me thinking. And I'm realizing it's so hard to unlearn the way we think about money and value. It really is really hard. And like even me trying to explain your thinking, Rebecca, to other people, I can't explain it. Like it's really hard to explain. Like I fall back on it's a bartering then instead. It's like not. So that is significant that it's so hard to unlearn this, and that is so ingrained in how we operate. I had a thought while you were speaking. So I know about this time banking system that's really popular in Japan. So for example, a man is living in Tokyo. His mother is in Fukushima, whatever, and he can't take care of her. So he volunteers his time to take care of another elder in his neighborhood, and it gets time banked. And so now another person in Fukushima can take care of his mother, and it somehow works out. Would you say that's reciprocity, or is that bartering? Like I'm trying to categorize all these
So,
new ways of thinking.
so time banking is beautiful. So don't misunderstand what I'm about to say, right? Like it is beautiful and it's still transactional, right? There's nothing wrong with it. Like there's nothing wrong with money per se. It's just not the same. It's and I am grateful that there's time banking because that guy can then get his mother taken care of, right? Like this is not a problem. It's just not it's it's comparing two different things. So it might be just a bridge or a stepping stone to what is reciprocity. And again, reciprocity is ancient and future, right? We've been in the time of forgetting over the past few hundred years, or maybe more, right? But you can still see it, as Paulo and I were talking about this morning, you can still see it in villages in central Portugal or um, very, very rural communities in the US. Paulo, go ahead.
No, I wanted to let you finish, but
Oh, okay.
this picks up just to say now that I interrupted you, just to say that I've been learning so much with Rebecca around the reciprocity. She's really the master of that. And on today's conversation, there are things that maybe are important, which is so first there's this maybe this disclaimer that there's nothing wrong with barter and trading, right? There's nothing wrong with transactional relationship. There's nothing absolutely wrong, and we will continue doing that, and it's so convenient. But the thing is, when you think about value, that's really value flow, and that's why we were having this conversation this morning. Whenever you value things in money, you flatten value. And we do believe you reduce value of the complexity of the things. There are still some places where the barter and trading, it's ritualized. Like, I don't know if you were in North Africa, in any Tuareg or region where you had to really go on a negotiation to buy something. Now it's with tourism, you don't get the real experience, but if you still buy something from a Tuareg, it's really a process, and it's a process that allows you, it's barter and trading, but still it's a process that doesn't flatten the value, because the importance of the conversation is to build relationship, because Tuaregs don't sell a lot to a lot of people, so they need really to establish in each other a relationship, and it's a way of having a conversation about the true value of what you are buying. It's the conversation that matters, right? So even in bartering and trading, you could have a rich conversation that allows you to understand the complexities of the value and how you are valuing a certain thing, so that you realize the value of it, right? So it's really not flattening the value, because that allows you to untap to invisible value and to value even more what you are appreciating, right? So it's a care act of appreciating, and you can have that reflection even in barter and trading, right? You can have an attitude and intention and reciprocal intention with barter and trading, right? So that's That's the first thing that that came out of our conversation. And the second thing is, if you really want to tap into higher value levels, even for barter and trading, you would need to do it collectively. And therefore, the reciprocal relationships are the fabric of what makes that possible, right? Which is kind of counterintuitive. But you get more value out of things that tell a story, that are a practice, that are perfected to an extent. And Japanese cultures, for instance, are very good in getting you to understand that, right? It's this master of sushi that spent 30 years on learning how to do it properly. And if you ask, he still says, oh, I'm almost there, but I'm not there yet, right? And whenever you experience the outcome of that, you are not just eating sushi, right? You are eating 30 years of a journey, right? You are experiencing this 30 years of a journey. And this gives you an example of how that becomes kind of almost cultural and the search for this type of thing and practice. And whenever you get there as a culture, as a collective, this is where you adapt to higher sources of value. So I wanted to contribute that out of our this morning conversation.
Thank you. And so to make it even more simple, right? Like if you're thinking about barter, right? We can go back to the apple and orange, right? We can go to that, right? Except that this apple is one of only 100 apples that is created from an heirloom seed. And this orange is one of thousands and thousands, right? Now, you might represent this apple, it might cost a little bit more, but is that actually going to represent the value in the marketplace of this heirloom apple versus one of thousands and thousands, right? So again, there's nothing wrong with barter as long as you understand what you're exchanging and valuing. I get angry, of course, about things like artists getting taken advantage of or caregivers taking an advantage of or otherwise, because I think it's wrong. But that's my point of view. That's, because I believe that everybody adds so much value. And if somebody is getting into that situation with full knowledge and intention, because maybe an elder decides that they want to babysit these children and that's their way of giving back and they don't need to get paid, or an elder, or a younger is deciding to take care of an elder or any of those things, and they are in full knowledge of what that looks like, then that's fine. It's perfect. It's just not the same as reciprocity.
There's another thing that comes to mind, Rebecca, is that it's a value I think everybody's born with, is equity. Like if you cut a birthday cake wrong, a 4-year-old, all the 4-year-olds will know that's not fair, right?
Yes.
Innately, we know what's fair and not fair, like intuitively, whatever it is. And so when we start talking about reciprocity in a circular, natural way, I'm wondering, because like I've had friends who I gave and gave and gave and they never gave back. So you keep track, right? You do keep track. And it's like after a few 45 years of just giving and not ever receiving and realizing this person just can't do that, you have to cut them off. Like you just can't keep doing that, right? So there's that metric you still have in your system, even though you're not writing it down, or you still know.
But you are keeping score. You are.
You are.
You are
and
keeping
so
score.
there's that too, right?
Yes. Well, so that is also based on money and our entrainment. Because, like, think of the game musical chairs. We are taught that as kids. When the music ends, there's somebody somewhere that's going to get something and I'm not. That is based on insufficiency. that we are not abundant, that everybody, the pie doesn't get bigger, and deep scarcity. It's the same piece. I'm not talking about DEI. I'm not talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm not talking about that. That's a different conversation. And it's also based on money, right? But what I'm saying is that you need to make equal parts of the cake is because we believe that there has to be equal, like that we all deserve equal. But what happens when the friend shows up late to the party and the cake has been cut for just the 12 people that are there? What happens then? Does somebody actually give up their piece? Or, like, so we actually have to imagine that how deeply ingrained this scarcity has been taught to us and forced down our throats. As a child, we are taught to play musical chairs at our youngest age. That I'm not going to get that. I'm not going to get a chair. I'm not going to be included. I don't belong. It's way, way deeper than just basic money or exchange. And this is why it's an ancient future. We have to untrain ourselves, as you just described.
Yeah, and I don't think we realize how deep it is and how hard it is to unlearn that.
Yeah.
And understand value in a different way. Like you said to me, Rebecca, when the first time I met you, it's like when you start asking yourself or others, what is it that you need?
Yeah.
People
Yes.
have such a hard time coming up with that because we're not used to thinking about it. We're just used to offering and offering and offering, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do I actually need? It's a hard thing to figure out.
Yeah,
So
but
interesting.
when you can say, so this is, I talk about this in forms of networking, Rob. I'm sorry. Do we need to end this part of the conversation? Or are you still okay?
No, I'm still okay. Yeah, I'm still
Okay.
okay. It's just, I mean, this is what's been happening every meeting. It's just there's so much here, right? It's so rich that it just is like we could go on. And some meetings, we can go on for like 3 hours, right? And we're still there. So, at a certain point, I'll cut us off to just look at the member portal a little bit. But no, please
Well,
continue. We're good.
I want to see the member portal too. So
Yeah, yeah. But
I
we're
want to be
good.
clear about that though.
Yeah.
So one of these, what I was going to describe is that I teach networking. And Maya left. Oh,
Yeah.
anyway, so I teach networking, and I actually taught a big of we did this whole value of networking event a couple of weeks ago with adults, professionals, like professional leaders. And I talk about the fact that when you go to a networking thing, people talk about what do you do? And what do you do is not okay because it closes down all of the opportunities you could possibly have to reciprocate, to work with one another. Because if I'm a doctor and you're, an artist, there is no immediate ability for us to work together. Except when you ask, what do you need? Maybe I need a new logo. Maybe I need a new piece of art for my office. Maybe, like what do I actually need? I need some joy in my life. Okay. Maybe you can teach me how to draw. Like so when you ask what you do, it does this. When you ask what you need, it does this. And that's what reciprocity is demanding of us, is actually understanding what we need. Reciprocity by not confining our conversation to what do we do or what money do we need. And so the joke is when you're going to a traditional networking session and a very, very capitalistic networking session, you ask a guy what he needs, he'll say $1 million. And you're like, great, what do you need $1 million for? Car, house, whatever. If you ask a woman what she needs, she's like, what do you need? So, I mean, every time, every time, every time, every time. And so this is also an entrained piece. So this is all comes from the scarcity mentality that is driven by a money economy, ecology, and ecosystem. So again, I am not villainizing money. I'm just saying it's not the only thing. If we could even just move just a degree difference and start to think about other things that are valuable, how much could change? When a pilot changes direct course by even 1 degree, it could send you in an entirely new direction. So what is the possibility by just including other currencies, other capitals in the conversation?
I just want to riff on that because I think this is another very important aha from this morning, and I would like to share it, which is when you are in a collective, let's say a community, you're trying to do something with more people. If the thing that you crystallize needs around is money, it's very hard, or I would say different way. It's very easy for the community to lose their locus of control because immediately either the community has a lot of money and you can address that, or that it doesn't have that money, and therefore there's nothing that the community can do. Immediately this goes outside. Where if you verbalize your concrete need, maybe there are things that the community can do. So you bring the locus of control in. So if you think on just this circumstance, it's what empowers you, right? Because if you verbalize the need that it's concrete, then that empowers you as a community, because it gets more into your control area, right? It gets more, you create more possibilities to sort it out. and it's just this invitation sometimes, right? So how can you do it in a way that then we can sort this out with our talents, what we have. And I really like the metaphor of the stone stoop as a metaphor of that precisely.
Is there any other thoughts?
So many, but I guess we'll have to talk another time. It's running out of time.
Anytime, like anytime is good for me.
Yeah.
Park it.
And next week, if you're all interested, next week we're going to talk. The final session is going to be on commitment pooling, and especially next Wednesday, Will Ruddock from Grassroots Economics, who came up with commitment pooling, is going to be speaking. So that's that's one that I think would be great to attend. There's so much here, and so right, I think all of this, there's so many things here that I said that is a great segue into the member portal platform and the framework, because there is this idea of we have a system that's based on competition, that's not based on reciprocity. And so we're saying there's something, I know we know this, but just to name it, like stepping back, which is, okay, well, why do we need to change the system? Why do we need to retrain ourselves? And to me, it's because each system produces certain outcomes, right? And so what I would like is a system, an operating system. I like what Rebecca said there, that reciprocity is an operating system, because that produces well-being, and that's well-being is not what our current system is producing. And there's so much talk about this as far as like a retraining. it's right because it's a challenge, right? And that's the kind of stuckness that we were talking about, right? It's a challenge. We know we need to like move that 1 degree. And thank you, Rebecca, for the airplane, you know, and the navigation and shifting direction 1 degree, right? Because that helps like, you know, helps bring in the hopefulness, you know, the idea that yes, we can do this, right? And it doesn't have to be, we don't have to just turn the plane around, you know, 180 in the sky, and that's probably actually not the best method. But let's start 1 degree at a time. And then it's saying, yeah, we can do this because we know, right? We know intrinsically that this works. And so, you know, holistic systems, cooperative, and what we're building, like the network, you know, the model and the platform to build, you know, it's also a network, and it's something called Circle Trust, right? Which is just a group of folks who we came together and said, hey, let's build you know, the platform that other communities can use, because that was always the design, right? Is that this, you know, is a network, right? Each node, you know, in the larger network, you know, and the value flows can go in between communities. I won't, you know, sort of get into them, but there are, I'm just going to put in the chat. There's a couple of handouts, you know, that we created, PDFs. There's also a link. I wrote a blog, I don't know, this weekend about redefining value. You all know a lot about that, so you know, I don't know this is going to be, you know, newer, super insightful information. But you know, one of the handouts is on relative value indexing, so that's you know, is an interesting concept. So I think so really the idea, you know, behind HSC is to say, okay, you know, we can do this. How do we do it? So like, you know, the first step I think is understanding this. The first step is sort of the understanding that like, whoa, like expanding our perspective, which is what we're doing here, which is what we're talking about. And if we say, oh, you know, I now my perspective is expanded, I'm understanding this, how do we go about and facilitate it? We can, of course, facilitate it in our lives, in our day-to-day lives. But also, you know, what holistic systems I think is, especially in the context of this discussion, is, you know, it's an offering to say, hey, this is a way, this is our sandbox, and this is our collaboratory laboratory to actually facilitate this. So in other words, like create, you know, it's proof of concept in a way, right? This is like the proof of concept that reciprocity works and actually fulfills you know, our genuine needs. So let me just share my screen. And I'm just going to concentrate today really on the contributions part, but I'll give a little intro. So this is the member portal, you know, platform. And basically there's, you know, I'll also share the link at the end. People can, you know, jump in and join. Yes, but there's kind of 4 main you know, mechanisms really of this community economy, and well, I'll speak to that as we go. You know, the first one is really like, okay, the people, the members, right? And so this idea of like, let's start with everybody bringing their whole selves, right? All the intrinsic value that everyone has, just that in itself. Oh, look at this person, Marianne. So right, so all that this person has. So we're, you know, bringing ourselves into the community, right? That's the biggest kind of resource that there is. The second is, you know, needs and offerings, offers and needs market, right? This could be called, I think this is, you know, could be called like a reciprocity market, or is very similar, right? People list their offerings, people list their needs. Oh, comes somebody. People list their offerings and their needs, right? And these are more, you know, I think in this context, they're still called exchanges, but these are like more informal exchanges. I think this is the playground for reciprocity. You know, these are like, these needs are, it's open to explore, free, barter, open to explore. Okay, someone's willing to pay. But the idea is, you know, we talked about, I don't know why my hand went up, but we talked about last week, you know, all the magic that's in here. And sometimes that's how I think about reciprocity is is the magic. It's magic, right? That's created, from all of this, mutual support and all of these different values and all these different currencies. And so at the end of the day, it can't be, all be tracked or quantified because it's beyond that. So, this is that mechanism. And then the third mechanism, which I'll share a little bit more about today, is the contributions. So this is really more of like what we think of as the resource pool, right? So people are going to bring in items that into the to the common pool for everybody, right? And this is really what touches on the topic today, which is what are the things of value that people are bringing, and how do we value them? So, right, this is our ledger, but first, really, I'll share the contribution types, right? So this is basically like the list. This is the list of what it is that the community is saying is sort of valuable to bring in. And right, so again, this is a community of professionals and entrepreneurs. So community engagement, right? So attended the community meeting, right? So everybody here, we're saying, oh, your time and attention, that's valuable. So we want to recognize that, and we want to reward it. So that's this idea of saying just everything we're talking about. What is all the kinds of value? We want to recognize what's really valuable in ways that our current system doesn't, and we want to reward that. We want to incentivize that. There's this piece. I'll just share here. Let me share. I'm just going to share the link in the chat here. Where's the chat? To this, I came across this LinkedIn post. You can check it out later, but it was so powerful, right? It's saying economics is our value system codified as value equations that determine how much we value one thing relative to another. And that determines what we are incentivized to do and what we confer power to. So it's like this, what are we incentivizing? Somebody, right? So there's things, somebody held space, right? Somebody's a conflict mediator, a mentor. In this group, referrals and connections is super valuable. So we referred, people to new collaborators or clients. People promote it. You invited, right? So this is another thing. Rebecca invited guests to this meeting, right? That's incredibly valuable. We want to, reward that. She also facilitated an event, right? These are the curators. I'm building the platform, so that's something. So the way that we're doing this is the way that the economic function works is this relative value indexing. So basically, it's a way for because as we know, this is dynamic. This is not something that's static that we can just set and forget. And so this relative value indexing is a way for the community to continue to upvote and downvote, the community to continue to say, and this is, I think, what Paulo was talking about when he was talking about his story around the negotiations and that broadening the value rather than currency, which is flattening it. So this is what we're talking about. We're saying as a community, we're continuing to have this conversation. We're continuing to negotiate with ourselves as a community about what we consider valuable. So I won't get too much into the mechanics, but essentially you use, and Will, just to give a shout out, Will Ruddick has helped me a lot with this and with these concepts. Thank you, Will. There's this base anchor. So we say, okay, like really there's the multiplier, the ratio, and then there's the unit of measurement. So the multiplier is saying, okay, well, let's start with one like kind of this anchor ratio. So we're going to say for us, like facilitating a meeting, everybody knows about how much that is, right? That's like, it takes 2 hours to facilitate a meeting plus the prep. And then what we're using is US dollars as a unit of measurement. And this was Will. I was like trying to stay away from this as much as I could. And Will said that, he felt like when you're doing this transition in these communities, he's seen time and again that if you go too kind of conceptual too soon, that it's like it doesn't work. And so saying that the US dollar, it's just, it's like an inch, it's a unit of measurement that allows us to folks to kind of start off, being able to conceive what the value is of these things. So if we say, all right, well, we're going to value that at 100, that's about $100. That's our unit of measurement. So that's what, that's one. It doesn't mean that we have to stick with the US dollar as the unit of measurement forever, but as a starting place. And then
Rob,
we say,
don't
okay.
apologize for that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Don't apologize.
And so, right. So we say, okay, so then what is, so is facilitating an onboarding session, is that more valuable or less valuable than facilitating, a 2-hour meeting? And we might say, and that's why this is marked as at 0.7. So we say, oh, okay, we think it's it takes a little less effort, energy, time, and attention. So we're gonna put that at 0.7. It's worth 70% of what facilitating a meeting is. And so then everything gets value indexed based, to each other. And in that way, it's also easy to do because you can change one thing at a time and it just changes relative to each thing. It automatically resets. And if you decide this is worth, around $150, you change this and it changes the whole enchilada. And so that's kind of the idea of these contribution types. And then really, this then talks about the contribution accounting. So we have then this token log, right? So we're then the actual reward is a token. And so everybody can go and add a contribution. So, okay, let's just say, what did I do today? I facilitated a meeting. That's true. Okay, I put the date today. I did it. I submit. I'm going to finalize the entry. Okay, there's my contribution. So that's 100 tokens, and that goes on my, here. So here it is. It came up here. Rob Hurwich. I facilitated this today. We have a verification, mechanism that's put in place. Because right, we do want to make sure that folks aren't just like adding a million contributions. So with this system, right, there does need to be kind of community curators who are overseeing it, and that's part of the value flow goes to them. But we want to have as much of it, kind of in this decentralized way as possible. So I'm going to send a verification request and somebody to Marianne. Right now, Marianne's going to get a notification because Marianne sees me here. So Marianne is probably a good person to just verify that. And then if it's verified, it'll come up as verified. So you can add a contribution, right? Verify. You can send tokens to people. So again, I'll use Marianne as an example. Thanks for, that's yesterday. Thanks for joining. So there was a deep, a really great discussion yesterday about, that expands, like, how do we expand how we recognize and reward value? So this is, this is like the first method, right? And using these tokens and this system, there's also ways where, like, there might be value. One thing we want to do is we want to have, as far as like gifting tokens, sending and receiving, we want to have a community pool that everybody gets a pool of tokens every month, but that they're tokens that can only be sent, to people. They can't be like used, by yourself, right? And so because there's a lot of value, once we start getting into the intangibles, there's so much value that's hard to codify, or that's hard to, like, so somebody did something, they they just their presence, whatever, somebody's presence at this meeting, you could just tell, like, it just held the space together, even though they might have not seen anything. So can we then give people, sort of recognize them for that? How do we really bring in, all of these ways? And the idea with this, with this member portal is that it's a mechanism for us to be able to do that. This might not be the end all, be all platform. This is built on a no code app building platform. So, we in the future, we might want to go to blockchain and Web3, but what it does allow us to do, and the decision we're making now, it can be pretty robust. And what it allows us to do is it allows us to adjust and move quickly as a community. And if we get a cool idea, for a new feature, how we want to do things, it's simple enough to implement. So yeah, so that's really that's kind of the idea of these community contributions. And then you can see this is my ledger of what I've contributed. And then the last piece or mechanism of the economy, right, is vouchers. And so the idea is what can you do with these tokens? I think that as we go along, there can be other pieces, but right now the primary utility of these tokens is that they convert into voucher credits. And so vouchers, we'll talk about that more tomorrow, but vouchers is really like the mutual credit system of this community economy. So it's it's a way for, it's essentially like the primary currency of this economy is commitments, is people's promises to, fulfill goods and services. So essentially we're, in this way, we're printing our own money in a sense, and that money is IOUs for our goods and services. So, for example, well, we can look at BART, right? BART has synchronicity matchmaking, services. And if I want that, actually, I already claimed that. So that's mine. We can look at my voucher wallet, but you can claim somebody's voucher, and then I can redeem that at any time. So here's my wallet. So at any time, I can redeem these goods and services. But my credit right now, I'm maxed out on my credit. I have 0 credit because I've claimed some, and I can only have so much credit in the marketplace. But anyways, I don't want to get too much into the commitment pooling, but that's really the third aspect of the exchange. And that there's relative value indexing also in place with the voucher. So again, the community gets to decide, right? So community could decide. So somebody could come in here as a lawyer and put in a voucher for their services, and somebody can come in as a babysitter, put in a voucher for their services. And the lawyer says, my measurement for my services is, this voucher is worth, an hour of my services, and that's valued at $500. And the babysitter says, there's an hour of my services valued at $20. And the community says, no, actually, we're going to relative value index that. We're going to bring the lawyers down to, to like 0.2 voucher, right? So that the community has a say in what everybody's is worth. And we're going to say, no, actually, compared to that baseline of 1, that babysitter, we're going to raise that to like a value index of 3, meaning we're going to make it 3 times more valuable, we think, than this person is actually, sort of presented it as. Yeah, I'll stop there. See if there's any questions, if that makes any sense, if it doesn't, if there's, and really this is, again, this is our, this is our sandbox. So it isn't saying, hey, I came up with this, like, this community economy model, and like, it's what's going to change the world. It's really about, this is a way to give it a shot and in practice. So the idea is for us to say, let's practice, let's start moving this, 1 degree over. And the more that we practice, probably the more that we're going to get better at it, and the more value we're going to actually create for each other. Because that's the idea. It isn't just to come in and practice like a game. It's actually, there should be value that's created that makes it worthwhile for people to show up and participate. I'll stop there. And I don't know why my hand was raised. Any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. So back to what Rebecca said in the beginning, that we all have time and attention. That's our main, we all have that. So when you do so I'm thinking spreadsheets and formulas, of course. So when you calculate the value of time and attention, the lawyer versus the babysitter, is that your 1 or your 100, whatever you were using to calculate from? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So the community, you just decide on one kind of base anchor, right? So so for the vouchers, right, and the commitment, pool is really separate than the vouchers. So because the vouchers is more goods and services. So in that realm, at this point we're saying an hour of someone's professional services is going to be that base anchor. So we can say, okay, an hour of someone's professional services, for the sake of ease, we can call that worth $100. So that doesn't, that like is our baseline. And so then, a babysitter, if we say, okay, we value that time and attention of the babysitter, and they come in at like valuing their hour at $20, then the community can say, no, actually, we're going to make it worth 5 times as much because we think that you should be getting paid, in this US dollar unit of measurement, $100. And the lawyer, they come in at 200. We say, no, we think you should get paid half of that. So we're going to make yours 0.5. Does that answer your question?
It kind of does, but it is so complex, right? Because now that lawyer is probably not going to spend time here unless he has a really good reason to only get paid $200 if he can get 500 elsewhere, right? So this is the conundrum of shifting all this, right? Like he has to be really motivated to want to do that, not be focused on material goods. Like, how do we make that shift? So this is now, for whatever reason, for that person is worth that investment.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. How do we change the incentives without like, cutting off our arm, to our hand despite our arm? Yeah. So I think, if a lawyer wanted to come in and bring lawyer vouchers, I don't think I would be like, hey, you're a lawyer and you're bad, we're going to really downgrade you. I'd probably be like, great, awesome, show up, thank you. But also be in that conversation and say, okay, what, right? Like, and bring the lawyer into the conversation. Say, like, why are you, why are you even here? That's the first question I'd ask the lawyer.
Because maybe they are looking at an entirely new way of looking at this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And if they're here, then they're probably on board with some experimentation. Please bring that lawyer here. Any other questions?
Yeah, I can't help but think about, it's getting people to a place where they even are curious about this and can even do that unlearning, relearning, and are willing to and able to, and because that mindset shift is the hard part.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why a lot of what we're concentrating on a lot that retraining and kind of education aspect. That's why this this launch kind of naturally turned into this, like, these 4 onboarding modules, and this material and these discussions, because it was just like to be like, hey, everybody, jump on into the app and let's do this. It was like, oh, that's probably not going to be very effective. Speaking of the app, I'm going to put that in the chat. Yeah.
I think there's also a piece as we are looking at tokenization and we're looking at Bitcoin, like we're looking at different kinds of Bitcoin and other pieces of the blockchain, that people are wanting to look at other value. So at least Paolo and I, Rob a little bit too, came into a lot of these conversations in an ecosystem that was based in blockchain, right? and sharing value at a different level. And what is a value of a seed of, and that was the economy, seeds. So I'm fully understanding and on board. I wish I had more time and attention to spend my time and attention in this. And this is how Paolo and I actually came to know one another as well. And anyway, Paolo, do you have any last thoughts before you have to jump?
Yes, I think the tool is you will unfold a lot of beautiful things with that departure point that you have already. So that's the first thing that I want to acknowledge, and there's a lot of thought already. So I want to acknowledge that. I find it interesting, two things on the tool as feedback, because that would be a piece of the puzzle that we are also considering, let's say, in terms of principle. But I want to say one thing, which is the asymmetry of needs and abundance is a precious thing. So if we value everything at the same kind of value, it kind of would probably tend to have a very stable system that doesn't exchange over time, right? So asymmetry there, it's a beautiful thing. And I was thinking I totally understand why you are going there on ranking that, but having a community reflecting on over time how we value and devalue certain things, it's really beautiful, because it means that there's an asymmetry of something that we are not making visible. and it could be interesting to understand that. It doesn't mean that we don't share value over a certain level of agreements on value, because those discussions also normalize. So they are both important. I'm just highlighting these two importance of things. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we thought on needs, because I saw that there's a need and an offering. We thought on needs as really the kind of the capital of patterning out what we could do together. Because if you find a pattern of things that we could do together, then we could co-invest on that to do it at a higher rate, higher level, more professional level, whatever that means to the community. So it's really would be a next thing to add. It's what are the patterns of the needs that eventually could pop up as a thing that then we can sort out together by bringing other people, by bringing more resources, by bringing wherever we need to bring in order to do that, because that could be super helpful to make this community meaningful. And the other thing is, on the same line of thought, what are the things that we are already kind of spending time, energy, effort, resources, money, that eventually by doing them together would diminish the effort, the resources, and that would be kind of the segue to that. And that would be very interesting in these two things. And I will leave with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paolo. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Those are three great points. And I'm glad I have this recorded so I could look at them again. And yeah, I know that question that you asked at the third one, right, is such a that's the million token question. Yeah. What can we bring
Because
together?
ultimately that's ends the transactional piece, right? It actually says we might need 3 people to babysit, or we might need 3 lawyers to meet that one babysitter, right? Like it might not be the asymmetry as Paolo described is actually where the interesting piece of this economy that you've so beautifully created gets super interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that an insight we've come to again and again that seems true, is that the whole thing starts with our needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Super. Rob, Ryan, Rebecca, wonderful conversation. I really like to be in this space. Thank you. And
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for showing up.
Thanks.
And and to name is a lot of people's energy and thoughts and insights has gone into this. So I don't think of it as mine or my
super.
creation. Yeah.
So congrats to the team.
Congratulations. Amazing.
Bye, bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
Paula.
Paula. Thank you.
Yeah.
Marianne, any last thoughts from you? Marianne, any
Mm.
thoughts?
So many thoughts. It's just like pulling on a thread and it just like doesn't end. So like for the pivot, we set up a mutual credit system just to start understanding it. We just set a spreadsheet, right, and try to make it, equal 0. Yeah, it's the interesting thing is the time it takes to actually track all that is crazy too much, right? For us to actually track. So in the pivot right now, we're 4 people, and for us to track our contributions, so it depends on the detail you want to go into, right? Like, how do we actually track that? And we all have different skills. It's important, and it's not, right? It's such an interesting conundrum, and I'm just wrapping my head around it, and it's going to take me a while. Yeah. Yeah, I'm just going to keep thinking about it.
It's important, and the measure
Yeah.
and the writing it down brings more information, right? Do you always have to write it down? Are you always going to have to do that? Or do you get to understand what those values are and the value is by just doing the practice of it initially, right? And then once that is part of the culture, because culture eats strategy and all of these tactics for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, once you understand that you doing the spreadsheet versus somebody else facilitating the meeting versus once you understand how those things are in the culture together, you don't have to actually write it down anymore, right? Because we have brought the value to the surface.
It's interesting.
When somebody, so keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And I think trust is in there very foundationally, right?
Huge.
Because as a team, we don't actually need to track it because we trust and know the value we're all bringing. And we're doing it to understand user credit as a system and just really thoroughly understand it. And yeah, it's so interesting because it's easy for the 4 of us because we know each other and what we do and how we contribute. Totally understand that at an intuitive level, right? But now we start bringing in people. Now everything gets wonky until we figure that out, right?
Sure.
And we get the trust and we understand the value.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It's thank you. That's so cool. I really, I love that you're set that up and that you're, trying it out. I think what you're saying, what both of you are saying, yes, is so true. It's right, is like, first of all, I think there's a size of people, right? Like, I mean, I've found that, I think we all, right? If there's like 7 or 8, maybe, up to 11 or 12 people in a group, I don't know that you need all this, app and platform and tracking, right? We know. But then the question is, once you get beyond that, you get, beyond about that number, and it's sort of kind of beyond our capacity. So that's, I think, one, that is one reason why why I think this tool can be helpful. Because then, there are advantages to having more, more people involved in the pool, because that creates more resources, more different types of value, right? It really creates more, of that economy of scale or community of scale. Rebecca, right, and I love what you're saying, right, is that there's not like a right or wrong way to have your contribution ledger, right? So some groups might be like, oh, we want to just like track every little thing, and people like, sort of doing that. And some would just say, no, we want just like, 5 kinds of contributions. And, but I think what Rebecca is saying, yeah, at the end of the day is like, it's to, start in a way where, right, it becomes part of the culture and becomes just easier, right? So then people feel like, oh, okay, we're actually doing this tracking, but it's less resource intensive.
You're
Yeah.
lifting the value to the top, right? So say Marianne's example from earlier in the conversation where she was saying like for 45 years she's been the only one giving. It's not on the ledger, right? It might not be clear that in the culture, it might not be clear to the friend that you're the only one giving. But the minute that you can't unsee it. Once it's out there, you can't unsee it. So when in the initial pieces of what you're like Rob, what is being created, Marianne, what you're doing, it's important, right? Because you have to lift up, you have to say, I'm doing all these damn spreadsheets every day, and it takes a ton of time, right? And I am facilitating all of these meetings, and it's taking a ton of time. And I'm doing all this research, and it's taking a ton of time, right? But somebody on the other end of the scale doesn't necessarily understand what it takes to facilitate a meeting because they've never done it, or keep a spreadsheet because they've never done it, or otherwise. So you have to elevate the value and make it visible. And I think this is the fundamental ancient future thing that I'm talking about in reciprocity, right? In tribes, everybody understood what everybody's value was, right? And it was a smaller group of people, right? Like once you get to 200 or so, you can't,
Yes.
like, except if you have 10 groups of 200, the economies looks, like there's going to be people that are going to have to find the food. There's going to have to be people that are cooking. There's going to have to be people that are taking care of the children and the elders. And there's going to, that are doing the wash or cleaning or whatever. So the in the group of 200, you're making those things visible. But once it's made visible, you don't necessarily have to dot every I and cross every T. I believe deeply, and Marianne, you and I have talked about this, that that we are moving to this, right? You look at what happened in North Carolina. The place got devastated by flooding during the hurricane. Now, today, on April 23rd, 2025, they are still in deep recovery. They have to know their neighbors. They need to understand where the generators are. They have to know where clean water is. They have to actually, it has changed everything. Now, do I want there to be apocalyptic storms all over the world to move us toward this? No, but there are many, many storms that are happening on a regular basis now. Earthquakes, fires, floods, lions, tigers, bears, right? We need to start looking at how we learn to get along and share in these basic fundamental things and bring the value to the surface so there's no resentment. So that we're not playing musical chairs, that we're not cutting the cake equally. Because cutting the cake equally is actually not real.
No.
I mean, it
Actually,
is. Go ahead.
It's interesting because you're making me think a lot, which is good. So, yeah, the cutting of the cake equally, it's such an interesting thing because that is innately an understanding we have about the fairness, right? Like what's fair. And depending on the context, like within the pivot, for example, Melanie and I were the original founders. And for 2 years we worked together. And she's a physical therapist, so she does a lot of work in the clinic and she does a lot of work on the side, right? So I was working full time to make this all happen, right? So for a while I was feeling that resentment. It's like, I'm working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. You come in once in a while, so I started feeling that, right? And then I started to get to know her really, really well and understood her from like human design and all that. And I understood the value she brought in, which is she's a magnet for clients and funders and she doesn't have to do much, but all the time she spends in the community talking to people is actually part of her value. So I can't go hour by hour. And I understood that innately, that the work she does when she goes hiking, she's actually out there now bringing in people, right? And so that's what the hard thing is about the way we've been trained, is you can't measure time and attention that way either, right? Because it's actually, even if she just spends 5 hours a week on the pivot, she's bringing in more value than me because of the people she's bringing in.
Different value than you.
Yeah,
More,
exactly.
see, when we say more, that means it's better, right?
And so, but that's where
which is not true, right? Like that. So that's part of the baked in problem too.
Yes, exactly.
Right. This is why, in value flow and value flow innovations for us, we have to bring these values to the surface. We have to actually show that the care economy is so important. We have to show the babysitter versus the attorney. We have to show, not because there's judgment or that it's better. So when you were apologizing, Rob, for using the dollar as a value, there's no need to apologize. It's a start. And it's freaking fantastic, right? Like it's just the first, right? There's no apology. And Marianne, you and Melanie, like you have to find your equilibrium. Right? And in order for you to not be resentful, you actually have to understand what that equilibrium means. Not that hers is better and yours is less.
Exactly.
Just because yours is more time and time intensive, which sucks. And hers is less time intensive and it's maybe more fun. You have to find that equilibrium, not because one is more or better than the other.
Exactly. And that's hard to explain to people.
But that's value flow, right? Like that's flow.
But that's interesting though, because that's the same as the babysitter and the lawyer. Yes. So we do it already, right? In the system, we value the lawyer much higher than the babysitter.
That's right.
So that's what Melanie and I had to figure out, right? It's just a different value. You just can't think of it one-dimensional, two-dimensional. It's like multi-dimensional. There's so much to it.
And that's why, Rob, I think that Paolo bringing up this idea of asymmetry into the system will be, version 2 or whatever for you guys, because this is not symmetrical. It's not.
No.
Yeah.
It's a great start. It's just not the bigger picture is not symmetrical for what you just described, Marianne, right?
Yeah. And I think I appreciate what you're saying, Marianne, because I think it speaks to, like, especially our first module, which I think you were there for, the whole person profile. So much of that is, is as a community, and then as each person is this, exploration and unearthing of like our value, especially, right? Because some people are going to come in, right? The lawyer or the, developer. No, actually not. I mean, some people will come in with a clear example, right? And they're just like, I have value and this is what it is. And this is what I can do. And I help, I'm really great with groups, and and that's great. And they might have other types of value that's more hidden, that maybe the group needs more. But then there's other people who are going to come in and be like, I don't know, don't know what my value is, but we know it's there. It's just there's the kinds of value in our culture, right, that we're trained to zero in on and say, this is good, this is what creates profit. And then there's other types of value that we're trained, that we're not, because you can't get paid for it. So, and I'm just sort of speaking to that, and it also speaks to needs. Okay.
So Marianne and I had a different conversation several months ago when we were first meeting, and the idea of a need that was paying for one's apartment got brought up, right? I need to pay my rent every month. It's a need. That's again like the hot water heater. No, you do not need to pay your rent. You need housing. It might not look like the housing that you're used to or that you know whatever, but if you need housing, it is different than needing to have money to pay your rent. So we have to decouple these things. It's not, and it's not bad. It's just not a neat package. And it's ancient, right? It's how people lived back in the olden days, not in the good old days. No, but in, you know, in rural communities where they have to learn to share and get along and whatever, and they share a tractor and they share, you know, they have to figure out how to get water together and or whatever. You have to actually figure out these things in an entirely different place. Because if you need water, clean water, and it's 3 miles away, and you have to figure out how to schlep it, and more than just you and your family, and like more in the community, you're going to get really, really creative really quick. Right? If you're so, you know, and it brings up, I'll only go a little bit more into this, but there's this story, which is probably an urban legend at this point, and I think I've talked to you about it, Marianne, recently, but that well-meaning volunteers decided to go into the African to an African village, and they took note that the women were carrying water on their heads from a place, and that they had to travel many miles to go get it and put water on their head, and they had scoliosis and all these terrible things, right? And they come back, and they're gone for most of the day because this is what's happening, you know, like this is how they get their water. And the well-meaning missionaries think, you know, well, we need to, you know, create a water system for them. And without asking anybody, they go about the business of creating this water system. And they finish, they teach everybody how to use it, high five, la 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 la, and then they go back to the US. They write their white papers. They come back to Africa 6 months later, and the entire water system has been destroyed. Because, I mean, I'll say why, and normally I ask people if they think of it. But A, they didn't have a conversation about what it, you know, what was needed. And they didn't ask the women what they needed. And what was happening is that the women were getting beaten because they were underfoot. So, like, you have to actually know what is needed. Might you need to use plumbing and pipes? Maybe. Maybe you should create backpacks for the ladies, or create a wheelbarrow for the ladies, or other things that get the women out of the community, you know, like out of underfoot, that allows for them to culturally be sustained in this ecosystem and still bring clean water back. We have to pay attention to this asymmetry. It's cultural. It's not, this is not equal. It's not neat. It is messy, messy, messy.
That's the hard part.
But
And
it's
we're
also
trained to be
ancient.
simple, right? It's $1 and that's it. Everything is $1, right? So
But in
it makes it
this
flat.
village, it's not $1. It's the women go
No,
get the
exactly.
water, right?
Yeah. But that's what's hard for us to understand then, right? What are all those angles and all those cultural, you know, everything, the history, the culture, the ecology, the biology, it's all in there.
And we only have to figure it out for us, though. Like we don't have to figure it out for the village in Africa. We have to ask them. If we
Exactly.
ask them, we might actually be able to be of service.
Yeah.
if they need
It's
us.
the only way.
And
We have no clue.
yeah, and right, we can, you know, we like maybe the village in Africa is fine. Like maybe we need to figure it out for ourselves
That's right.
first, and then
Yeah.
you know, then we could yeah, who knows what the village in Africa needs, but. And just to say, you know, like Marianne, as far as the spreadsheets and the difficulty of all of that, you know, that's what this app and this member portal is being created for, right? To say, oh, okay, let's facilitate this. We want to try mutual credit. Okay, great. Here's an app for that, right? Isn't that the saying? There's an app for that. This is the app for that. So that way, instead of it taking, you know, hours for you to facilitate and learn how to actually, you know, like the mechanisms of credit clearing, which because I built this, I realize is, you know, there's some complexity on the back end. On the front end, it's simple, right? It's like, and that's why I like it, you know, commitment pooling. It's like, oh, we just, you know, I have a service. This is my voucher. Oh, okay. I want your service. I take a voucher, and that's good, you know. But like facilitating it on the back end is you know more complex than I initially thought.
Mm.
But it's cool, and I you know I was really proud to be like, wow, I figured out how to do it. So, anyways, yeah. So that's the idea is just to not have the logistics of it be the barrier, right? It's like take the kind of logistics, you know, as of the barrier out of it, because just you know, sort of the retraining and facilitating as humans, you know, in our culture and shifting things is hard enough as it is.
Yeah. I just want to add two quick things, and then I know it's way past our time.
Yeah.
We usually go 2 hours anyways because of this.
Okay. Well, I'm going to add a couple things just
Yeah.
in this bigger conversation. So there's an Indigenous woman, Lila Watson quote, which I think is important to sort of surface here. And what she says is, if you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let's work together. So this is fundamental reciprocity. It speaks to this village, this water, these things. Like when we are working communally on needs, and we actually are able to talk about that and not money, then we understand that our liberation is bound up with like each other. Like we understand that we can work together. If we're doing this because we need to have an exchange, then it doesn't, this is too hard. Like we have to actually fundamentally know that there's something better. That there's some that we're working towards something better. If you don't, then like barter is perfect, right? Like, and again, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm just saying that if we want that there we understand. I personally understand that I want something deeper. I want something more meaningful, and I understand that I personally live in a world of reciprocity that I am so grateful for. Okay, so the people that are going to be attracted to this have to have some kind of piece of this mind that they care that there's something deeper and more meaningful in their life than just accumulation and stuff. So that's one piece. And also, what I also want to say, one other quick thing, is that the unintended consequences of us making assumptions and coming to conclusions and judgments and answers is also something we have to take into account in this piece. That reciprocity is deep, and that there's unintended consequences when you're actually not holding all of it lightly.
Yeah, totally. And that's the hard part.
Yeah. And and which is why I give both of you so much credit, and I'm so grateful that you're working on it.
Likewise. We'll continue because this is a long, big conversation.
It is a long,
Thank you
big
so much.
conversation.
Thank you, Marianne. Yeah.
Chat
Thank you
soon.
so much.
Very
Bye.
good. Thank you so much. Well, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording. Is that okay?
Oh yeah. Here I can